Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Britt, Kanawha, West Hancock Athletics Podcast. This is episode 118, October 20th, 2024. And this evening, I have the voices of Eagle football, Kevin Wilson and Jay Hiscocks. And I also have the man behind the computer rankings, Brent Moore, also known as BCMoore. We're going to talk to you about some Iowa high school football playoffs, particularly Class A tonight, and then after the first round with an Eagle victory. And the next one, we'll talk more about all the other classes. But tonight's going to be mostly West Hancock based and Class A based. So before we get to these three ruggedly handsome young fellas, our first round thoughts and pod predictions, I'm going to recognize my sponsors for this episode. I have 11 lifetime sponsors, and then one somehow that logo got a little larger than the other ones, but another one, some insurance company in Britt. My lifetime sponsors, I have Pritchard's Auto, Triple B's Food Trucks, Swenson's Do It Best Hardware, Levi Dawn Trucking, Doug and Kathy Zool, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Zach and Chris Schlugger, Window World of Mason City, Kelly Real Estate, Nick Schmidt, and the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise and Mojo Productions. And then my other sponsor tonight is Jay Hiscocks of State Farm Insurance. We've heard of that guy a time or two. Before we get to these guys again, thanks to those sponsors. Those lifetime sponsors gave $400 to be a lifetime sponsor, so they're always going to be on these playoff podcasts. If you want to sponsor the podcast, let me know. If you just want to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund, go to sangerstrong.com. We help fund the Hall of Fame. Scholarships for graduating seniors are given out. We support the athletic and activities at West Hancock or any other community outreach program that is in need of some funding. So check that out at sangerstrong.com. 50 episodes ago, I always highlight some old episodes. 50 episodes ago, on episode 68, was two-time state wrestling champion and national wrestling champion at the University of Iowa in 1954, Dick Govig. And then 100 episodes ago, on episode 18, was Russ King. He was the football coach right before Bob Sanger in 1966 and 67. Cool story about him and his national championship watch that he lost, and some people helped him get back. So check out that episode if you get a chance to. All right, fellas, we always start with introductions. Just make sure everyone knows who you guys are. Just tell everyone who you are, what you're doing, where you're at, and why you're on here. Kevin?
All right. Well, I'm Kevin Wilson. I'm the play-by-play voice of West Hancock football. I've been involved in everything from the school, for a lot of things at the school for a number of years now. Day job, I'm an accountant, and I just like high school football, and particularly West Hancock and that other school that you don't want me to talk about. So
that 1A school.
Yeah.
Jay?
I'm Jay, married to Bonnie, father to Claire. Got a State Farm business in Britt there. I've been doing West Hancock football with Kevin for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years now for myself.
9, yep.
This is my 9th season, so it's been a pretty good run for us here these last, 6 or 7 years. I always tell people we're kind of in the golden era of West Hancock football. It's been a really good era, obviously, throughout time, but since 2018, it's been a pretty special run. So, really enjoy doing it. Stay involved in the school, helping out with different things. I was the basketball coach, stepped down from that after last season. So, want to wish Coach Savoy good luck, as winter sports will be starting here pretty soon. So, Coach Savoy and Coach Sanger with the wrestling squad, and then of course, Coach Sonius with the girls basketball program. So, I know Coach Sanger and Coach Savoy are both rooting for those seasons to get delayed just a little bit like they have in the past. So,
And Mr. Moore.
Hello, Brett Moore. I publish BCMoore rankings, which does Iowa high school football and girls and boys basketball. I've done this since approximately fall of 2001, so about 24 years. I'm very happy to be invited back this year. That's a nice compliment.
You bet. Well, if there's going to be a podcast about high school football with some high school football nerds, there's no reason we shouldn't have the BCMoore guy on here, because we check those things regularly and often. And we've been texting each other. So I'm like, hey, I was doing a little digging on BCMoore or through the records or whatever, and here's what I found. It's just fun to use that information to put some cool stuff together. So definitely glad to have BCMoore on here with us. Like I said, we're going to hit Class A football playoffs here, the first round. Before we do that, though, I always put out this disclaimer. This is just a for fun podcast. This is not for bulletin board material. We are West Hancock homers, of course. We are always going to pick West Hancock. We're never not going to pick West Hancock. But we are trying to give you a pretty unbiased look into the playoffs. Like I said, we just love high school football, and especially small town high school football, and we just want to put some information out there and let you have a good time while we're having a good time talking about it. So, Brent, let's get started with you. Explain the BCMoore ranking system, your computer formula, just so when we go, Brent, tell us about this game. What are you seeing for this line or whatever, so people can kind of understand what that means.
Yeah, in general, it's built on a statistical model called regression. And what regression does is it attempts to judge the value or the strength of each team based on their past performances. So for example, if West Hancock beats Garner Hayfield by 30, the model is going to try to predict the strength of those two teams such that if you subtract the two team values, you're going to end up with 30. So based on this ranking or judging of various past performances, the model comes up with a value for all the teams in the state of Iowa. And then it can also rank them based on strongest to weakest. And again, the value is in the number of games that have been played. And now that we've played over about 5 games, the model comes to its realization of how good it's going to be.
Yep. So we've had 8 regular season games. Explain like how games get counted or not counted.
Oh, if the game is expected to be within about 23 points of the game margin, then it is counted in the rankings, and the model tries to disregard games that are expected to be blowouts and try to disregard the results of those. In high school football, there's maybe 50 to 70% are competitive games. There's quite a few games that don't really matter, and they can detract from the analysis.
Yeah, and I always say in your world, and then looking at stats like, oh, this team only has this many rushing yards, or they have this many rushing yards, or only one guy has this many yards and everyone else is way behind. It's like, well, a lot of it depends on the game. If you're beating a team 60-0 at halftime, the statistics aren't going to tell the full story of how good or how not good somebody is. So that's what we like about your computer system is it kind of gives you a very realistic understanding of which teams are contenders and which ones are pretenders, essentially, because you can be 6-2 and not be a good team. You can be 8-0 and also not be a very good team. It just, a lot of it depends on your schedule and who you're playing. You can be 4-4 and be a very quality team. So you guys on the left there have anything to add to Brent or have any questions for Brent so people can better understand the BCMoore system?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not sure exactly how to ask this question, but because people will ask me, I'll give you a for instance right now. West Hancock's 5th in the computer model, St. Ansgar's 4th in the computer model. And in fact, this last week after we beat Newman, we actually dropped in the model further. Can you explain in maybe better layman's terms than what I can, how that works where a team that you beat might be ranked higher than you?
Yeah.
I've tried to explain it and I can't do it near as well as you can.
Well, again, it's all based on game margin. So in this case, the key game is St. Ansgar and West Hancock. West Hancock played at home. Home field advantage is 1 point. In the end, West Hancock won by 1 point. So basically, it's a tie game as far as the computer is concerned. Now, clearly, the fans were there. They observed the game. They understand that somebody was a winner. It's all very obvious. But to a statistical model that uses game margin, again, there's these caveats.
So right now, looking at Brent's stuff here, you go to bcmoorerankings.com. Tri-Center's #1, Packwood's #2, Lisbon 3, St. Ansgar 4, West Hancock 5. And then if you know the top 4 seeds, it goes West Hancock, ACGC, St. Ansgar, Lisbon. And those 4 top teams ranked by the association panel are not the top 4 teams in the BC model. So just something to think about and look at as we're going through these. This is a computer system. and people rank the top 4 teams based on watching game film and other things. So it's just kind of fun to get a full view of what it is we're going to be talking about here. So go ahead, Brent.
If you have a team that's undefeated, look at their schedule strength. Because if they're playing a schedule strength that's maybe in the lower third of all the teams, that is a team where the rankings have a guess, but it's not nearly as good of a guess as, say, West Hancock that played a stronger schedule. Just wanted to note that.
And on that note, strength of schedule is not a part of the model, correct?
It's not a direct part of the model. It's an output after you do the analysis. But it's a helpful hint at times. For instance, Lisbon has had big game margins against weaker opponents. So therefore, we're going to have to wait till the playoffs to get a better picture of how strong Lisbon is.
Yep. And going to the playoffs here, regular season, eight regular season games. There are 32 teams in the playoffs for each class, of the smaller classes at least. That started back up in 2021. We also had 32 qualifiers 08 to 2015, had 16 before that, and went back to 16 in 2016 up until 2021 again. Just kind of some changes over the years. But right now we're at a 32 team setup, so you have to win 5 games to win the championship. Let's real quick before we get to our schedule and the top 4 teams. Let's talk about the Friday night game at Newman Catholic. You guys traveled over to Mason City. I watched it from my couch down here in Southern Iowa. What did you guys think of the 50-0 win over Coach McCardle and the Knights?
Go for it, Kevin.
Going in, we thought maybe, Newman has had the injury bug, and they had an injury to their starting quarterback. I can't remember what week it was. It was like, if I heard right, it was a collarbone that he broke. And we started out, Friday night and jumped on it fairly quick. And Newman made a change at quarterback during the game, and they were able to move the ball. They just weren't able to get it in the end zone. They had a couple of drives that stalled because of penalties, but I think Newman is better than what the score indicated, just because of that fact. They can move the ball. They weren't able to get it in the end zone Friday night, but I don't think that's going back to talking about what the computer did. If you watch those two teams, Newman's better than a 50-0 loss to West Hancock.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They're a little shorthanded with being injured, and they've got some really nice athletes. The Bliley kid, McGuire, and then especially that Keston. He was one that moved around, quarterback, running back, receiver. Just a really good athlete. Tough to bring down in the open field, and West Hancock found that out, but they did a good job of making adjustments within drives to keep Newman off the scoreboard. I mean, they moved the ball from the 30 to the 30, a lot of different drives. I thought it was a pretty business-like game for West Hancock as far as offensively. Things got a little bit clunky in this. I think it was the second quarter. Both teams had some weird flags, and it seemed like that second quarter took forever because every time if there was a flag, it seemed like the referees had to huddle up for a minute and a half to figure out what they wanted to do with that flag. But yeah, all in all, Eagles get home with another undefeated season, and will be at the top of everyone's board as far as the number one target with, being defending champs, ranked number 1, all that. So they've lived up to the hype and then some so far this year heading into the playoffs.
Yep. And like Jay said, undefeated regular season. It was our 17th undefeated regular season in school history. Lots of one-loss regular seasons. Didn't add those up. That would be a lot. Talking about penalties the other night, Ray Gretlith's penalty for blocking a kid out through the back of the end zone. I was like, was it excessive? Was it just, I don't know. That was interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a penalty called for that.
He watched the blind side before the game.
Yeah. The 2005 hit about Michael Orr. Yep. So let's talk about the top 4 teams. I already mentioned them. Let me share my screen here if I can hit the right button. West Hancock's schedule. We just talked about Friday night, but let's talk about the schedule in general. The first 8 games of the season. Double overtime, 22-20 win at Garner Hayfield, which they're a 2A school. They did sneak into the playoffs. 59-23 win against Belmont. That was Hall of Fame night. And then the 21-20 win at home against St. Ansgar. We were down, I believe, 14 in that one. Then at North Union, 46-7 win, 48-0 win against West Fork. Homecoming, South Central Calhoun, the team we thought both years, like, hey, they might give us a good battle here, and that did not happen, but it was a good solid win for us, and I think that helped us in the computer rankings a little bit too. And then a 60-6 win at Lake Mills, and then a 50-0 win, like we just talked about at Newman. The touchdown we gave up to Lake Mills was a kickoff return in the first quarter. Otherwise, we're pitching 4 straight shutouts, which has not happened in a long time. Don't remember the score we gave up against North Union. I mean, we 5 straight games given up single digits. So
yeah, the score against North Union was late. I was looking back. West Hancock, the first team defense has not given up an offensive scoring drive since the St. Ansgar game.
Yep. And I think we're at 34 consecutive quarters, giving up single digits or 0 points in a quarter. So a weird quirky stat I keep up on, because that's just how I do things. So that's West Hancock's schedule. The other 4 top teams, the number 2 ranked team is ACGC. There's their schedule in front of us. What do you guys see on their schedule that stands out to you?
They score a ton of points.
Yep.
And looking at them statistically, they're typical Class A football team. They want to do it on the ground, and they get the job done. They got 2 backs that are either over 1,000 or right at 1,000, and they're with the exception of that one game, they really have had a pretty good season. They had a barn burner with Riverside. I think Jay and I were on the road that night, and we were getting text messages about that one as we were driving home, because it was a back and forth, looked like a basketball game going on there for a little while.
Yep. We have one common opponent here in South Central Calhoun. They won that one 28-14. We beat them 47-0. So just to give a little comparison there. What are you gonna say, Jay?
Yeah, they're an explosive offensive team. I always get worried when you try to make that transitive correlation between this team's played this team and this team's played this team. You just never know what's gone into those. Each game it's hard to do, say how that score will translate. But I will say ACGC, out of all the other teams around the state, I've probably watched them maybe the most outside of like our own area. They do have some pretty explosive athletes, and they're a team that's primed to make a run after falling a game short, I believe, last year. I believe they lost. Did they lose to Madrid last year?
They lost to Madrid by 7, I believe, in the quarters.
And they brought all those guys back from last year. They've got a ton of talent, and like Kevin said, they're pretty explosive offensively. I really like their backfield and their quarterback. It's just a matter to me for ACGC, are they going to be able to hold up defensively to make a run to the playoffs? But from what I've seen on film, they've got all the talent in the world to make a run at this thing, like a few other teams have the talent to as well.
Yep. And Brent, we're on your site here. Their best game was a 26-point win over Mount Ayr, and their worst game was a 31-point win over Panora. Can you explain how their worst game was a bigger win than some other games, just so people understand how this works?
Yeah, in this idea, they were predicted to win by some amount, and they didn't win by that big amount. This is where you have a non-competitive game and the computer tries to adjust for it. There is no adjustment in the best or worst game, though.
Yep.
So in this case, they're probably expected to win by 35-40, and they only won by 31. So sorry, 40 is exactly the number.
Yeah.
They have a top 20 schedule strength, so no real concerns with them. They should be ranked appropriately.
And Brent, I forgot to ask this earlier. Talk about the predictions. Our school resource officer down at my school checks your thing every week. His son plays for Winterset, and he's like, BCMoore says we're going to lose by 16, and then he comes back and goes, we only lost by 9. So he was like, we're kind of happy about that. Talk about the accuracy of the predictions.
Well, I added another column this year, which you can see. One is the pregame prediction and one is the current prediction. And starting off at week 1, the computer uses last year's analysis. So in this case, however strong you were last year, that's what the computer thinks you are this year. And then over time, those two numbers should kind of converge over time. If you're expected to win by 20 and you win by 20, that means the model's predicting well. Your team probably is going to move up or down very much at all. If you're predicted to win by 7 and you actually lose by 20, that means the model needs to adjust, and it will lower that team strength down to try and meet the past performances better. You can see that with West Hancock again when they played the Lake City team, whatever the right word is. Thank
South
you.
Central Calhoun. Yep.
South Central Canton. It was a replay of last year. The computer had some sort of number, and Britt West Hancock came in and played much, much better. And thereafter, the computer had to move West Hancock higher.
Yep. And does your predictions predict the winner 80% of the time, 90% of the time? Do you have a number roughly?
Yep. For playoff football games, which are the most important, the computer model is about 79% correct. So about 4 out of every 5 games.
And so looking back at us here, we're predicted to beat Hartley by 49.69. Obviously in a playoff game, you're probably, if you're a 1 versus a 4, you might get a lead, call off the dogs early to keep everybody healthy. That number might look a little different, obviously. So
yeah, most likely it's going to be judged as a non-competitive game, and the results of it will try to be minimized out of the model.
Yep. So Brent said 80% of playoff games get predicted correctly through his model. So something to look at as you're making your predictions this week. Let's look at St. Ansgar here real quick. Their schedule, 14-point win at Osage, which is a decent 2A school. And then that 1-point loss to us. Their other non-district game was Nashua Plainfield, who I believe were they second? No, were they second or third in their district? I can't remember. I think second. And then obviously all the other opponents we played, scores were fairly similar. What can you guys say about St. Ansgar?
Really, really strong team. I was very impressed by them when we had them here at West Hancock, and really they took it to us for most of that game. West Hancock was able to just hang on and keep battling and take care of business on that final. It was kind of a gotta have it drive for West Hancock that ended in a touchdown, and then they were able to hold St. Ansgar out of the end zone, and obviously St. Ansgar had a kick blocked to potentially win it. It would have been a pretty good distance, if I remember right, for a high school kid. But yeah, they're an impressive team. The Shuisao kid, the senior quarterback, was really impressive against us and throughout the year for St. Ansgar, throwing for 800, almost 900 yards in the regular season. That's a really good number for them. The Michaels kid is a pretty explosive running back. Yeah, Coach Clevenger and his squad, they're a lot like West Hancock. They play really good team football, good at blocking and tackling. And I would put West Hancock as the number 1 ranked team in my own rankings, but it's very, very close between West Hancock and St. Ansgar. Kind of like, Brent said, it was, on a neutral site, it's basically it was almost a pick 'em, and West Hancock won by 1 that night. So yeah, I think these two teams, West Hancock and St. Ansgar, they are the 2 best teams going into the playoffs.
And I just highlighted the passing yardage. That is typically how much St. Ansgar passes for over about a 6-season period in the past. They were just like us in the run, the occasional pass. They're very balanced this year per se. I know still 2,400 yards to 890 yards is not balanced, like a 50-50 split, but it's as, two-dimensional as St. Ansgar has ever been. At least as long as I've been paying attention. So I think they're a dangerous team in the air and on the ground. So, yeah. Kevin, anything on St. Ansgar?
I would just, I could reiterate what Jay said, and well coached, disciplined football team. And, I think last year they had, I think they're going into the playoffs with a little chip on their shoulder. Cause last year, Jay and I both thought they might have been a dome team last year, and they got knocked off before they got there. And I really think that they're going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs because they got something to prove, I think.
Yep. And their best game was a 60-point win over Newman. We beat Newman by 50. Their worst game was a 20-point win over Nashua. And like I said, Nashua is hosting a playoff game, or they're at least in one. I'm drawing a blank without looking in front of me. But Nashua,
they've got Newman.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
play
hosting.
Newman.
They're hosting Newman. Yep. So they are the number 2 seed in the district, and that was their worst game. Brent, what are the insights on St. Ansgar's numbers here?
Yeah, I feel like they played a top 25 schedule strength. So the model's gonna be predicting their strength relatively accurately. We've talked about their game against West Hancock, proves that they're need to be up there in the top 5.
Yep. And they're currently at 4. And then our last team, which I always get this thing in my way here. Let me stop my share and then reshare it. I'm not the most tech savvy guy in the world sometimes. Stuff gets in the way. There we go. And then our last top 4 team is Lisbon. Here's their schedule. Good defensively. They've only given up double digits once, and that was versus Pekin, who's a quality playoff team this year. Otherwise, they've given up, 7 or less points in each game with 1, 2, 4, 3, 4 shutouts. What do you guys think about Lisbon?
One player or one athlete that I think of with Lisbon is Tiernan Boots. He's a really good trackster, I believe, and a really good wrestler. Yeah, almost 1,400 yards, 10.5 yards a carry, 24 touchdowns. He's a very, very explosive athlete. I've had a chance to watch a couple of their highlights and stuff on different live streams and that, and he's the real deal. He might be one of the best halfbacks in the state of Iowa. So when you're starting your team with that kind of weapon in the backfield, especially in small school football, he's a home run hitter from everywhere. The only thing that looking at that team and their resume, not a huge fan of their schedule. What was their schedule strength again? If you go back a screen, or is it on here?
Overall,
55th.
Yeah. So 50. How many teams are in Class A? 58, 59.
there are 58.
So not a great schedule, but I mean, in high school you can't really control your schedule too much. So they've done what they needed to do against that schedule, but it's definitely going to ramp up in competition once the playoffs get rolling along. I think they'll find a way versus Bellevue, but I think they are the top seed potentially that could maybe have an early exit before the Dome. So who knows? I think they're the ones that's got to be an upset alert the most.
All right. Those are the top 4 seeds. Anyone have anything else on that? On the 4 teams before we get to the actual pairings themselves? All right, let's get to it. Here are the 16 playoff games that'll take place this Friday, October 25th. For 4th versus 1st, you can see on the screen on the left there. We have the 4 top seeds we just talked about, and then we also have Akron or Lamar's Galen, Madrid, Maquoketa Valley, Tri-Center, and Wapsie Valley are hosting first round games as district champions. They play against 4th place teams from other districts. One thing they do is they avoid district rematches in the first round, and then as best they can after that. And then those top 4 seeds, those 4 seeds have to be kept apart until the Dome if they all win out. So let's start with 4th places versus 1st place teams. Wayne at ACGC, St. Albert's versus Galen. That game's going to be at Akron Westfield. So we were talking before we hit record. The way they might put pods together, might they have to rely on neutral sites? And I don't know what the state's mindset is on that for second round and quarterfinal games. But first round game, we do have a neutral site game. Then we have Starmont at Lisbon. We have North Tama at Madrid, Columbus Community at Maquoketa Valley, South Central Calhoun at Tri-Center, Lake Mills at Wapsie Valley, and then we play, West Hancock is the we play Hartley, Melvin, Sanborn it'll be the 6th matchup between the 2 schools. We beat them in the 1997 quarterfinals, and then we had a string in between 2020 and 2022 where we played them 4 times. 2020 was in the first round. We beat them 56-18. 2021, we played them in the regular season and beat them 20-6. 2021, we played them in the quarterfinals, beat them 27-0. And then in the 2022 regular season, we played them over there and won 31-18. And then they avoided us. We avoided them in the playoffs that year. They went to Woodbury Central in the quarterfinals and lost that game. What do you guys think about our first round opponent, HMS? You guys called it week 4, so brag up, brag on yourselves a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I think it was just dumb luck that we thought maybe we were going to head that way or get matched up with them. But I was looking at the lineup of it this afternoon, and I commented to you guys before we started recording tonight that they got some big kids up front there, and they're going to try to run first. Talked with Coach Sanger this morning, and he was looking at their stuff, and he said just what I just said, they're going to run first, but they're capable of moving the ball through the air. And I think it's a good first round matchup for us. I obviously think we're going to win the game, but I think it'll be a good test for us because they'll show us some things that we haven't seen all season long. And I think it'll be a good game.
Yep. Here's their roster, like Kevin was saying. Some of their linemen, if you're a lineman, your number's 50 or higher. 250, 250, 230, 210, 230, 220, 290, 315. Some of their guys up front, and they're fairly young looking. Only see a couple seniors on their line, and as we know, a team is only as good as their line. And then HMS's stats. They have thrown the ball quite a bit, 67 of 136 for 931 yards, 7 touchdowns, but 10 interceptions. They have 2 primary running backs, James Gellerman, a senior, 180 carries, 745 yards. Jack Massbergen, 129 carries, 646 yards. They've accounted for all of their rushing touchdowns, 1,440 total yards, 4.6 yards per carry. Receiving wise, their 7 touchdown throws, 4 of them went to a freshman, Jackson Vogt, and the rest are juniors or seniors, pretty balanced in who they're throwing the ball to. 7 fumble recoveries, 5 interceptions, no returns for touchdowns in any facet of the game, punted 17 times. So that is HMS. They also have a new coach this year. Their former coach, Jay something, I can't think of his last name. He's now Eilers. There you go. He's like an assistant principal somewhere in Nebraska, last I heard. Their new coach is Jeremiah Delzer. First year as a head coach. He was an assistant at West Marshall and Bondurant Farrar. Played 1 year of college football in Northwestern and Orange City. So, anything else about HMS you guys can think of?
I can remember the Gellerman kid when he was a sophomore. He was a pretty good athlete. Now he's their primary running back. And like Kevin said, I think it's a good opportunity for West Hancock to face a team that has a new coaching staff. So they've never prepared against this coaching staff. So it's not somebody that's familiar with you or you're familiar with them. So you'll have the kids' full attention. One of the neat things, kind of a side note from the last few times we played them, 2 of the stars of the show on both sides of the field were, of course, West Hancock's Ryland Barnes and HMS's Cooper Ebel. They're both now starting linebackers for the Iowa State Cyclones. So last night I had the opportunity to go down and watch that game, and it was kind of cool to see both those guys lined up next to each other, and was able to talk to both Ryland and Cooper after the game last night. And I asked Cooper, I go, do you think HMS is going to finally get their revenge on West Hancock? And he said no comment. So
oh man, those couple years we played them, 2020 and 1 and 2, they were loaded with talent in those seasons. So which game of the 4th versus 1st do you see being the closest game? Which one intrigues you a little bit?
Actually, I think there's 2 of them, and both of them are the closest games that BC has out there. The St. Albert and Geelan game, I like that one. I think those 2 teams, they're probably a little bit familiar with one another because I don't know what their history is exactly, but I think they have played each other more often than not in the past years. And I think one being at a neutral site might have something to do with it. But I think Council Bluffs has been tested. I mean, they haven't had the greatest record, but they have played some tough games. And I think that one will be, that one has the potential to be close. And I think the other one that could be close is the North Tama at Madrid. I don't know much about North Tama, but they've had flashes of brilliance this year. And if they catch fire at the right time, they could pull the upset in the first round.
Yep. Jay?
Yeah, I'll go. In my predictions, I think every district champ moves on, but the one that I might keep my eye on is Lake Mills at Wapsie Valley. I'm not super sold on Wapsie Valley yet this year, so just keep your eyes on that one. Lake Mills has got some athletes. I know we've seen them and handled them pretty well, but they do have some athletes on the outside, and they've got a couple good linemen to help open up some holes for them. So that's the one that I'm going to keep my eye on. The other two that I had in mind are the ones that Kevin talked about, and they're obviously the closest on BCMoore. But I wouldn't be surprised if that Lake Mills and Wapsie score is maybe a couple touchdowns apart. I think the BCMoore rankings have it like at a 30-point projection right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a 2-score game or so.
South Central Calhoun at Tri-Center intrigues me a little bit. I still think Tri-Center wins by a couple scores, but both teams, when they want to pass the ball. And so sometimes when you have two passing teams playing each other, one team gets in a good rhythm, one team gets hot, or they both are, and it turns into a little bit of a track meet, even though one team obviously is a 1 seed, one's a 4. I agree. I see all the 1 seeds moving on. In these games, Columbus and Maquoketa Valley, I apologize to your fans out there. I just don't know much about those teams as much as some of the others. We have common opponents or been former opponents. But St. Albert Galen, I am intrigued with as well. We played Galen in the first round last year, beat them 38-22. They had some fairly young kids out on the field, and they did a good job on us defensively. So we've been kind of watching them this year, thinking, well, they're pretty good. We might see them in the future. So I'm going to keep my eye on that game on Friday night as well. Kevin, do you have all the 1 seeds moving on as well, do you think? Or you think someone's going to pull an upset?
No, I see all the number 1s getting by.
Okay. BC, anything stand out on your end?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. The one note I looked, and we have about 550 scores of Galen in the database, and they've only played St. Albert's 1 time.
Really? Well, made a liar out of me, boy. If I look stupid. I just thought, given the relationship of their being fairly close together, that they had probably met a few times.
Yeah. Just every 2 years when you recycle, odds are you might get paired with some of those other Westernish Iowa schools. So, all right, let's move on then to 3 versus 2. The second place team hosts. So we have Danville at Bellevue, Logan Magnolia at MM Crew. Be Marcus, Meriden, Cleghorn, Remsen Union, Earlham at Mount Ayr. We had Newman Catholic at Nashua Plainfield, North Lynn at Pekin, Linville Sully at Riverside Oakland, South Wynn at St. Ansgar, and Sibley Ocheyedan at Woodbury Central. What games stand out to you guys in these 8 3 versus 2 games?
To me, as far as looking for a road team to potentially win, there's 2 of them that I've really got my eye on. One of them is that Earlham and Mount Ayr game. Wouldn't be surprised to see Earlham take that one. They've got a nice resume built up. They play a decent schedule. If I remember right, that's the closest in the BCMoore projection. The other one, and just talking with some other people that have seen these 2 teams, the Sibley and Woodbury game could be intriguing. Kevin knows what I'm talking about and who we've talked to in that, but that's one that we've been told to keep our eye on. So
I would agree with Jay on those 2. I think if anybody has a chance to go on the road to win, it's those 2 teams.
Brent, what are you seeing on the computer side? Which games are the closest according to the model?
Yeah, I agree with what was said. Danville and Bellevue is expected to be a 9-point game. Bellevue by 9, and Mount Ayr and Earlham, Mount Ayr by 2. I had the time to look up the series of Earlham and Mount Air. Again, I'm pretty close on some of these teams. And it looks like they've only played 5 times, and Mount Air is 5-0 against Earlham.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the game, Earlham and Mount Air, that could throw off the pod pairings a little bit. If you look on your map, Mount Air is darn near in Missouri. I mean, I'm in southern Iowa, and when we have to go to Mount Air for a sporting event, we're like, oh, that's a little bit of a jaunt. They're down there. Earlham, if they win that game, it pushes more teams in that central part of the state near ACGC. So I think that could affect the pods a little bit, possibly. So do you guys have all the 2s winning, or are you calling any upsets here?
I think Earlham beats Mount Air. And then I've got all the other home teams across the board. I think speaking of the other local teams on that side, I think St. Ansgar rolls. Newman and Nashua Plainfield. I think if the younger McGuire kid is available at quarterback for Newman at Nashua Plainfield, that could be one that is a little bit tighter than what the models say. But yeah, I've got all the home teams winning except for I'm going to pick Earlham to beat Mount Air.
Yep. And
I'm intrigued.
Oh, go ahead, Jay or Kevin.
I'm intrigued by the Northland at Pekin. Northland, the last 2 years, they have been really stingy on defense, and it's in the regular season. And this year, Pekin has put up a ton of points.
Yeah, that's it.
And almost everybody. So that's strength on strength there. I'm curious how that one's going to turn out. If I could peek at that one as we were going through the games Friday night, that would be one I'd be interested in seeing, just because I want to see what can happen with Northland's defense, because they've been pretty stingy, and Pekin, like I said, is just, they put up a ton of points so far this year.
Yeah, and wasn't Northland, after the first set of rankings by the association, weren't they 5th or 6th?
Yeah, they kind of took a slide here these last 2 weeks. They lost to Maquoketa Valley, and then they lost to, who they lose to last week? Bellevue.
Yeah, and top 2 teams in districts. So
yeah,
they didn't play their toughest schedule till the end.
Pekin, to me, and all the teams in Class A, they might be the most intriguing team to me, just because the amount of points they put up. But for us, they're kind of a mystery because they're not in our area. We haven't seen a lot of them these last few years as far as make deep playoff runs. So they're just the uniqueness of the newness of them and the numbers they're putting up there. They're an intriguing team to me, and I think we'll get a pretty good feel for them if they're able to advance past Northland and win by a few scores, like the models are said. The models say 18 points. So if they put up a 20-point win over Northland, I think they will gain more traction from people as a contender to get down to the dome.
All right, let's predict some pods here. You pretty much said who your 16 winners are. They have to keep the top 4 teams. That's West Hancock, ACGC, St. Ansgar, and Lisbon. Those teams have to be kept apart until the dome, so they kind of get their own pod. Who do you see being in Lisbon's pod?
So I've got Lisbon versus Bellevue, Maquoketa Valley versus Pekin for that pod. And I think if that's that pod, that's a pretty fun one to me just to look at, because like I said, Pekin's super intriguing. Lisbon's got maybe the best or one of the best running backs in Class A football. Pretty explosive. Maquoketa Valley's got one of the best defenses. So that'd be a really intriguing pod, but that's who I've got with Lisbon in my predictions.
Okay. Kevin, do you have anything different?
No, I'm going to be boring. Jay and I are pretty much going to match here, I'm afraid. And I would say that he's hit it right on the head. Echoed my thoughts exactly on those games, and I agree with him that just geographically and the way things work out, that's probably a pod right there.
Yeah, I have Danville beating Bellevue. I try to throw an upset in there once in a while. I think that's a pretty evenly matched game. So I would go Lisbon, Danville, Pekin, Maquoketa Valley. So that would be my only difference there, but I could be very wrong as well. Again, kind of out of our area, not as familiar. Danville just started up their football program again a year or two ago. Nice little story there of them booting things back up and getting to the playoffs. So, who do you have in St. Ansgar's pod?
Go for it, Kevin.
All right. Well, I've got St. Ansgar and Wapsie and Madrid and Nashville Plainfield. And I think Jay probably has the same thing there.
Yep.
And that just makes sense geographically. I know there's been some thought about Madrid not being in with those guys and Pekin being in there, I think, but that doesn't make sense geographically. And if you really want to reduce travel, you don't send Pekin that far away. But if it was a first round matchup, I would think it would be a different story, but I don't think the pod they're going to do that. So
yeah, I have the exact same 4 teams. If Newman happens to upset Nashua, I think that could change things a little bit because Newman is a little more west and they could get a little more creative with keeping the top seed getting the better draw per se. But that's a big what if Newman upsets Nashua. So
and speaking of St. Ansgar, it's very similar to last year as far as the situation that's thrown in front of the state. Last year it was St. Ansgar beating West Hancock, but West Hancock staying in the top 4. So that's the thing, that it's the uniqueness of Class A last year and this year is you've got 2 teams from the same district that are in the top 4. So it kind of makes it a little bit harder to try to match things up as from a pod perspective. But looking at that pod, we've all got the same thing. I think obviously we all like St. Ansgar this year, but Madrid, they were a good team last year and they bring back a really, really good quarterback. They would be really good program. They'd be a team to not take lightly. Make sure you're focused up if you get matched up with them.
Yep. How about ACGC's pod? What do you guys think for that?
We've both got the same thing, I believe, Kevin, right? We've got Tri-Center and Riverside and ACGC and Earlham. I think you could flip those opponents possibly. You might have there's going to be, no matter what happens, there's going to be some rematches. And even if Mount Air were to beat Earlham, I still think that might be, Mount Air would be in that pod. So, then Tri-Center's one of those teams that really intrigues me as well. They've got a really nice resume. Obviously, Brent's models like Tri-Center. They've played a nice schedule. They've really taken care of business, and they're a team that will throw it and run it. And sounds like they've got a pretty impressive quarterback. I believe he's a sophomore. But
hey, Brent, could you do a little research right now, Brent? What's Tri-Center had for record-wise the last couple of years? Because I feel like they're that team that, like Jace kind of said, came out of nowhere this year where don't remember them in the playoffs much, if at all, lately. Can you see what they've been the last handful of years?
Yeah.
No. While he's doing that, I have the exact same 4 you guys do if we're strictly looking at geography. I have some different theories if they say geography be darned, but for the most part, looking at a map, that makes sense. And then West Hancock's, just by process of elimination here, we all 3, I would assume, have West Hancock, Lamar's Galen, Woodbury Central, and MMCRU. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. If you're looking at a map and even though Brady Wilson was making fun of me for the screenshots I sent or the pictures I took, just geographically, that makes the most sense. These 4 pods, even if like Earlham beats Mount Air, Newman beats Nashua, a couple of those situations, for the most part, the geography doesn't change a whole lot. What do you guys think about that? Like the geography part of things, there's some theories. What's that?
I wish they would just after the first round, they would just seed it up 1 through 16 and let them travel and play. And if you got to play Saturday games, but you have to remember, I grew up and went to high school in Illinois, and that's how they did it. And Illinois is a much bigger state as far as travel times. So when you're going to Southern Illinois from Western Illinois, you got some 6-hour road trips in there, but they also played Saturday playoff games if it was a big difference. And I just love that. I'm always a fan in every postseason. If you can get a true bracket, top to bottom one, especially when it gets to 1 through 16, that's what I would prefer. But I also understand that games are being played on Friday nights and travel's involved and it costs money to travel and all that. So
Yeah, because I know in some thought processes, like rank the district champs 1 through 8. The number 1 seed, which would be West Hancock this year, gets the number 8, district champ in their pod. And I think that would be Wapsie Valley, except it would be weird to have us travel past St. Ansgar essentially to get some of those schools, and then some schools would have to come even farther to get there. But last year we went to Starmont and Wapsie, and I think there was just more Eastern Iowa teams last year in the playoffs than there are this year. So
yeah, and that was the uniqueness last year that
Yep.
it's flip flopped this year at St. Ansgar and West Hancock. And this year, the other thing compared to last year is you've got one of the top 4 teams is Lisbon that's down in Southeast Iowa, whereas last year we had it was a couple of Central Iowa teams, us and St. Ansgar, or was it Madrid, us, St. Ansgar, and Woodbury. Yeah, so no representative from Southeast Iowa.
Yep, and Madrid's come to us for playoff games before, so that's not too far away to send Madrid up to Britt by any stretch. So it all just comes down to, do they value geography or do they valuing the top seeds? And either way, it's going to be interesting. So do you guys have all 4 top seeds, the pod hosts, going to the Dome? Do you see any upsets if these pods that we just said hold true and next Saturday they come out as this? Do you see any of the top 4 seeds not making it to the Dome?
I've got West Hancock. If the pods hold up how we thought they're going to be, I've got West Hancock, St. Ansgar being the top seeds getting to the Dome, and then I'm going to take Maquoketa Valley in that one, and then Tri-Center in the what we would call the
ACGC.
Southwest ACGC pod. Yeah. So, but I mean, Lisbon, Maquoketa Valley, Pekin, I could see any of those 3 teams making it. The West Hancock, if they stay in that pod, that's a pretty impressive pod from just a tradition standpoint. Teams that have had success in the playoffs obviously got Lamar's Galen in there. Really good team. Woodbury Central, a really good team who's got a strong playoff history as of late. And even if West Hancock were to get MMCRU, that's a really good balanced offensive team that can hurt you through the air. So I think that's one of the more challenging pods as far as balance is concerned. So yeah, in my pods, like I said, St. Ansgar, West Hancock, Tri-Center, and Maquoketa Valley are my picks.
Brent, real quick, did you have a chance to look at Tri-Center? What's their story with past seasons?
Yeah, this season is 7-1, great season. Last year would be 2023, 3-6. In 22, they were 4-5, 21, 5-4. And then it gets a less strong from there. They were 2-5 the previous year.
Yeah, so I mean that would be a great story if Tri-Center were to come out of the pod and make the Dome. They've been average at best the last handful of years and having a really nice season, and I think they'd be a dangerous team against anyone they're playing. So, Kevin, what about you? Do you have any upsets in those pods if those were the pods?
Yeah, well, I'm intrigued. As Jay said, I'm intrigued by Tri-Center. I don't know, haven't seen them play, just heard a little bit, and but I think they got an outside chance of getting in there, and yeah, I would go with Jay and his Mac Valley getting in there too. But Lisbon in the past has a good history. Once they get into the playoffs, I know we met back, what was it, 2012? We met them in the championship.
2011. Yep.
11. Okay.
Yep.
And so but that Tri-Center team is intriguing. If I had to pick one team out of that wasn't in the top 4 that had a chance, I would probably go with them.
Yep. I'm obviously going to say West Hancock makes it to the Dome. I'm sticking with ACGC right now. They're a conference school for us. Like Jay said earlier, they were close last year. Earlham's been kind of up and down this season. I think they're dangerous. Tri-Center is going to give them it'll be a good pass versus run game if it's ACGC and Tri-Center. Riverside gave ACGC a good game. I think that's going to be a very competitive pod as well. I think that was the 50-42 game. St. Ansgar, I think, wins that pod. Their best test would be Madrid, more than likely, I think. But I think they're just too good. And then that Lisbon, Danville, or Bellevue, Pekin, and Maquoketa Valley. I think it's going to come down to Lisbon and Pekin in that one, is my opinion. Just think pretty explosive teams, pretty good athletes on the field, put up a lot of points. I could see that being a good game, similar to like ACGC and Madrid last year, where that was a highly touted quarterfinal game. Ended up being like 21-14, and both those teams were putting up big points in the regular season and the playoffs. I could see a similar type matchup there. So, yeah. Anything else you guys can say about the pods, first round games? Anything else that we missed so far?
We probably missed every one of them.
Yep.
I hope not.
Comment. There's 3 teams that are just kind of untested, Pekin, Lisbon, and Maquoketa Valley. So if you're out there, watch the results of those games versus the computer model expectation. And that'll tell you if they're contenders or just kind of pretenders. Those 3 really haven't been tested.
So if these pods hold like we think they might, based on mostly geography, that could maybe be the weakest of the 3, or of the 4 pods possibly. That'd be interesting. So, all right, we're gonna get wrapping this thing up here. This will be Wes Hancock's 35th playoff appearance. There's been 51 years of play, or 52 years of playoffs, and we've been in 35 of them. We've only missed the playoffs 6 times, if I did the math right: 89, 98, 01, 04, 08, 09, and 13. 7 times since 1984, we've been in the playoffs every other year. We are 28-6 in first round games. I was just doing this for my email I send out weekly. We've only lost 3 first round home playoff games. We're 62-29 overall in the playoffs, with 5 state championships and 5 runner-ups. Hoping to make it 6 this year. Would be great. We're 15-2 in the playoffs in this decade. Coach Mark Sanger is 19-2 in playoff games since 2019. So pretty excited for another run here. Hopefully we have several more of these episodes coming up, fellas. If we have another one, which after a Wes Hancock win, it would be next Saturday or Sunday. And then the week of the second round, I'm having a podcast with Lisa Hiscocks and then Dave Beach, and then the football coaches' wives, after the football season ends, get their perspective on the craziness of playoff football. And then Sue Wood and Kurt DeVore from the old Kanawha Middle School. And then Marianne Skoglund is my guest coming up. Those episodes will be about January. So, fellas, anything else you want to throw in there that we forgot to talk about, you're thinking about? Any other classes that you want to mention real quick?
No, good luck to all the teams out there, and it's a fun time of year to see some new teams and just the community pride that comes out during the playoffs. And we're, like I said when we were talking earlier, it's kind of been the golden era of West Hancock football these last 6 or 7 years, and hopefully it continues and West Hancock can make a run. I think they've got all the tools and the coaching staff to make another deep run in the playoffs. It's always fun to watch. Kevin and I talk at the beginning of every year. There's always different shoes that got to be filled, especially small school. You're going to lose a lot of talented kids through graduation. There's always question marks, and this year was no different. The team, it was really fun to watch this team improve throughout the season. They're a unique group, just a bunch of grinders, and it's been fun to watch them progress. So hopefully they can keep it rolling.
Yeah, I would say what you said. Good luck to everybody. Like you said, we're West Hancock homers, but Class A, particularly Class A football, is to me so much fun to watch, because they're just kids that are out there, and most of the time, probably 90% of them are just out there to have a good time and to have some fun with their classmates, and that's what makes high school athletics so much fun, is just seeing kids out there that work hard and want to do it because they love the game.
You bet. And I want to thank you two for all you do for West Hancock football. I'll be up there on Friday. I try to get to every playoff game. Just love what you guys do and what you bring to the live stream and the communities. Not just the community. I mean, if you're in the area, get to the game in person, get your butt in the seat. But for the people from 30 plus different states, some nights that are watching and listening to the games, people from other countries, they really appreciate you guys and all you do. And then Brent, We lost your video there, but we can still hear you. We know you're there. You put a lot of time and effort into that computer model as well, and a lot of people like us really enjoy looking at it, and helps us understand what's coming up that next week. So thank you guys for all that you do, and it's a magical time of year. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Just a lot of fun. So thanks again to my sponsors tonight, my 11 lifetime sponsors, and then Jay Hiscocks of State Farm Insurance. So, all right, go Eagles.